I know we've only known each other for 4 weeks and 3 days, but to me, it seems like 9 weeks and 5 days.
All right, all right, right. Welcome, 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 all my passionate plant people and garden enthusiasts to the Let's Get Growing show here on the Urban Gardener channel. I'm Enoch. I'm your host today. We've got a great show for you today. Today is the second Sunday of the month, and one of the things we started last year on the show was every second Sunday of the month we get together with our good friend gardener, master gardener, Scott Wilson from the Gardener Scott channel. He's going to join with us here just a little bit later on in the show and answer all of your gardening questions. It's really fun get together with Scott each month and catch up with what he's got growing on in his garden, or probably more so the case this time of year is probably a lot of garden planning and things like that. We'll talk about some other things. And like I said as well, we're definitely going to answer all of your garden questions. So if you do have some questions, and I want to see some questions from everybody, I see we've got a lot of people already here, already starting the conversation today. So yeah, definitely get in there, ask some garden questions. And if you can remember to put them in all caps so that I can see the questions from the rest of the conversation and make sure that I get them answered for you today. This is, like I said, a great time to be able to find out some of those things that you're wondering about, whether it's from last gardening season. There was something that happened maybe, and you're kind of questioning and wondering about what you should do in order to take care of that going into your next year's garden season, or some garden planning, any sort of questions that you have or thinking about, definitely drop those into our chat today, especially here in just a little bit when we have Gardener Scott on the show with us as well too. So yeah, great to see you all. Thank you all so much for being here today. And if you are joining with us here today, definitely click the like button, hit the thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet, hit the bell notification to be notified of all of our upcoming live streams and videos. I did put out some videos actually this last week, just a couple of kind of new introductory videos. I did one where I talked about my garden story, so many of you have probably heard me talk about it before on the show throughout the last couple of seasons. But I shared with everybody kind of how I got started, almost, because I haven't been putting out videos for a while. So I kind of thought maybe a nice new introduction to me, the channel, all that, what we're about and everything as we get ready to get moving forward here in our 2025 garden season. So I'm going to hopefully get back into the swing of things, get some garden journals out, hopefully each week, and kind of take you along with what we've got growing on in my garden space and all of that this year. So definitely subscribe to make sure that you can see all of our upcoming videos too that we got going. I'm going to hopefully get working on, it's been my plan, usually right after the beginning of the year, I start sowing my first seeds of the 2025 growing season, and that's usually my peppers. So I'm going to get started doing that. I've got most all of the varieties that I'm going to grow this year all selected out and everything. We just got to get them sown out. I think I'm going to work on that and do that this week and all of that, and then hopefully share that with you all towards the end of the week as well too, with the garden journal video talking about getting started growing. It's gonna, that's the fun part of this time of year. A lot of us maybe in colder regions, like our guest today, Gardener Scott, or probably still really a lot into the planning phases of what we're going to do in our gardens. Some of us got some spaces where we can already start growing and getting growing. We've got our good friend Mark Roche Colbert coming up here in just a minute, and he's going to be showing you some stuff that he's sowing out and how he gets started during this time of year in the garden spaces that he has out at the school that he teaches at. So look forward to that here in just a few minutes as well too. But yeah, so it kind of varies for all of us. We had Wendy Fan on the show yesterday. She was on the show yesterday. Encourage everybody, if you haven't had a chance, go back and check out our show from yesterday. We had Wendy Fan on the show. In fact, it was actually our 100th show yesterday. So yeah, we were celebrating that yesterday. 100 Let's Get Growing shows. It's been really awesome. But yesterday we had Wendy on the show, and and we were talking all about how she's got things growing on and all of that too. So there's people around who are gardening throughout different regions and different climates and everything. So we're all kind of in different phases of getting started. But the one thing for sure is we're all really thinking about what's going on and what's growing on in our garden spaces at this time of year. So looking forward to the conversation again with Gardener Scott coming up here just a little bit. And also real quick here too, I also want to give a big, huge shout out to all of you who are watching us on our replay too. We don't want to forget about you guys who take your time throughout the week and catch up with what we've got growing on here on the Let's Get Growing show. And thank you so much for being here. If you do have any garden questions, you can also put them down into our comments section down below as well too. And I'll get those garden questions asked maybe next time of Gardener Scott when he's on the channel again. Or someone else or myself could possibly get those questions answered for you as well too, right in the comment section. So definitely get into the comment section below. I'd love to hear from all of you. And yeah, excellent. We do got a great show for you all today. Like I said, we had Wendy Fan on yesterday, and then I do want to mention real quick too, if you didn't get a chance to check out last Sunday's show was really, really awesome. We got to start the whole year out with what was really starting to get really fun towards the end of last year here on our Sunday edition of the show, was doing these garden roundtables, getting a couple of different gardeners together and kind of having a fun conversation between, all of us here, you and me and these other two gardeners, was really, really a fun kind of feature of our Sunday edition. So we started out the year last Sunday with Gary Pilarchik from the Rusted Garden, and Callie Kim from the Callie Kim Home and Garden channel on YouTube. And just a really fun time. Kim and Gary have done collaborations with each other over the years, many different times. From the East and West Coast collaborations and things like that they've done for their channels over the years. So it was really fun to be able to get together with them and have them here on the Let's Get Growing show with all of us, and get to talk all about what they've got growing on, and got some garden tips for you, answered some questions and all that too. Because again too, this, like I said, our 100th show, it's just been really fun. And one of the things I've just really been really enjoying the most too is kind of just how getting to interact with all of you and get to see all of you on a regular basis now, and starting to see the conversation in our chat, just growing and growing each and every week as you all continue to show up. And let's see here, I want to make sure here we can get started here. I want to say thank you to Jay for being in our chat there, sharing with us all of these great links and different helping out with facilitating our chat and all of that as well too. So thank you, Jay, joining us from Midwestern Ontario, Canada. Thank you so much for all that you do. And I see Christopher's in the chat as well too. Thank you. Good to see you, Christopher, joining us there from all the way up in Norway. I'm sure it's pretty cold where he's growing right now. he's got some good indoor stuff. We're going to have him on the show here in a couple weeks as well too. So we'll catch up with what he's got growing on in his indoor gardens up there in Norway real soon. All right, let's see here. We got I see David from Bowtie Life in the Garden in the chat as well. Nice and early. Yeah. Let's see here. Also, we got Lawrence joining with us. Thanks, Lawrence. Good to see you here. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining with us. Right on. Oh, in the soil, Big Will Dog in the soil here with us as well too. Great to see you. Right on. DLR 978. Awesome. Great to see you. Excellent. Connie Davison joining with us, saying hi to everybody. Great to see you again, Connie. Thanks for joining with all of us here. See Dusty Flats in the conversation. Awesome. This is so great. Thank you all so much again for joining with us here too. I really appreciate it. We got Bettina. Say hi back to you. Good afternoon from snowy Eastern Ontario. Awesome. Excellent. Riverdale Gardens. Right on. Like I said, so great. This has been so much fun getting to hang out with all of you and see all of you in our chat, see all of you talking with each other, welcoming each other. We just got, again, to just a really great gathering that we've been growing here on the Let's Get Growing show. Just really great to again have all of you here, and I just really thank you for all that you do and participating with our conversation. And again, like I said, if you got any questions, I see some questions, in fact, already kind of jumping in there too. But all of you guys there, get some questions together, and also make sure that you get them put in capitals so that I can see them from the conversation, and make sure that we get a bunch of those coming in for Gardner Scott as he comes in on the show here real soon too. So right on. Let's see here, make sure I'm not missing anybody before we get going here. We got, like I said, my good friend, our good friend actually, Mark Boucher Colbert in the garden with his segment coming up here real soon. Oh, shooting the soil. Right on. Hello. Right. Excellent. Let's see here. Make sure I'm not missing anything, but thank you so much, everybody. Like I said, who's this? We got Bohemian Herbology Natural Solutions. Nice. Thank you so much for joining with us. Oh, and I see we got Serena also. And I love it. See, like I said, everybody welcoming each other, saying hi to each other. That's so great to see all of you. And Jersey Girl jumping in there. Right on. Excellent. Like I said, let's catch up with what's going on with our good friend Mark MBC in the garden, and I'll get back with you here in a minute or two, and we'll get to our conversation with Gardner Scott moving along.
Hey guys, it's a beautiful January day in Portland, Oregon. I'm Mark Boucher Colbert, and you're in the garden with MBC. And that's speaking of sea, that's the last you're going to see of me, because now you're just going to see the garden. We've had a mild winter. I'm talking not even any real severe prolonged freeze yet. Last year around this time, got a huge coating of ice. This place was like a pond. It was totally covered with ice. Now it's like a verdant meadow. Anyway, we just take what the years give. But I am doing some early spring planting, and I guess it's about as early as you can get, right? It's but let me tell you about a 3-part system that I use to get this really early planting. So first of all, I've got some beds that were left prepared, more or less, and under cover. So these, we finished harvesting some corn from these beds, and then got them all nice and neat and left them prepared under cover at the end of the season, so late November or early December. Not knowing exactly when we'd be able to get into them, and I didn't expect quite this early, but here we go. We've got some nice temperatures for dry for a couple days, then I think we're gonna have some rain and then more dry weather, which is nice. And so with just a little minimal amount of weeding here to take out just what germinated, a little bit of chickweed, I took out that, and now the seed beds are ready. So the first, and of course with protection, you can see these are some simple boxes that we've made. I call them the Conestoga wagons or the Oregon Trail wagons. They're a 4x8 box. They have handles on both sides. 2 handles, I probably would have put 3, because as a double-decker box, 2-layer with 2x6s, they're pretty heavy. But you know, 4 people can comfortably lift it. I've moved them by myself when I need to, so it's not that bad. And you can see we've got the concrete reinforcing wire, 2 panels of that are just tacked down to the ends. I don't know if you can see that. I've got some chicken. Yeah, there we go. Let's get in there. See the poultry staples, they're called, I think, right? Those U-shaped nails, in other words, and they're just tacked into the wood to hold those down. And then I've got some greenhouse plastic that I staple gunned first, and then put these kind of battens here to take the force of the wind and such, distribute it. You can see them there too. They're just basically strips of lath or 1x2 that run more or less the whole length and are nailed in. They just distribute the force if there's any wind that comes under here and wants to gust away. You can see I leave the ends open, and I can kind of roll them back like almost like a t-shirt sleeve. And really it's just so it keeps it well ventilated. I don't need to worry about it overheating. Here you can see I have planted some radish seeds in here. So this is one bed, and then I'm about to plant some spinach seeds. So that's item number 1 is beds are ready with protection. Okay, got that, check. Item number 2 is cold tolerant plants. Radish and spinach are both good candidates for that. Now, I'll explain this, all this coconut fiber in a minute, but you can see the spinach seeds there. Now, what I've done with the seeds is to soak them overnight. That gives them a sprouting advantage. And the whole logic behind that is even a seed that can grow at cold temperatures is going to germinate at a temperature that's a little bit higher than the temperature at which it can grow. There's a little bit of a bump you have to overcome in terms of temperature, and that allows the seed to grow when the weather truly is good, right? It needs a higher temperature to germinate than it does to grow, so it's going to ensure that things have warmed up, and in other words, just a brief warm spell of 1 or 2 days is not going to trigger germination right away. You need to wait till there's a little bit more steady warmth, more sustained, and then the signal is given for the seed. It can overcome the germination inhibition and then germinate and then grow comfortably at that soil temperature. But as I said, it could grow at a little bit lower temperature. It's just that in order to ensure that everything's going to be good and it's not going to be taken out by some sudden freezes, it is sort of evolutionarily adapted to a higher germination temperature. All that to say that we can germinate these indoors, soaking them overnight, and give the seed basically that confidence because we're at 68 or 72 or whatever your indoor temperature is. So those seeds are primed and ready to go. The germination process has been initiated. Now, when I soak them and drain them, they have a tendency to stick together. So here's where the coconut fiber comes in, okay? That's gonna make sure the seeds can be distributed evenly. They're not gonna all clump together. So I took a handful or 2 of coconut fiber that was already moistened, and the seeds are all distributed through that like a matrix. So now really what remains is to sow my seeds in here. Let's see if we can see. I'm gonna just sprinkle them. I may have to come back and thin a little bit, but getting a pretty good spread on there. Let's see what I got. I think it's Bloomsdale. Yeah, and this is I did a quarter cup for this 4x8, 32 square feet. I always put a tag here. I'm gonna come back and put a big wooden tag because I don't trust these plastic tags. They just take off. They get buried, missing, broken, all kinds of stuff. So I really want to know what I did, when I did it, how much seed I did. I don't know that I soaked them because that's my standard technique. Anyway, I do this for peas. Lettuce is really small and will germinate in 2 to 3 days indoors, so I don't find it needs a pre-soak. I just plant that into soil blocks or into small pots. But definitely for peas, they will benefit and come racing out if you can put some kind of cover on here. Another effective cover, not quite as good as a plastic sort of mini greenhouse like this, but you can put down this polyester-like fabric called Rime or spun row cover. It's a light, white, thin fabric. You can get it in various thicknesses. Some is better for preventing a frost. Some just is more of an insect protection. All of it will warm the crop a little bit, a couple, 1 or 2 degrees, maybe up to 4 to 5 degrees or 6 degrees. That makes a difference. You're creating a microclimate. So we have a little bit of a race here at school. We get dismissed on June 7th. So we have to get things done. We have to get it done. And so that means I'm out, jumping out. Isn't it a beautiful day? Look at those clouds. Gosh. And the stark form of the trees, man. These are gorgeous days. Anyway, it's fun to be planting on a beautiful day in January. And then knowing that whatever comes, rain or cold, these little babies are going to be protected. And they're going to grow up and fast. The beautiful thing about this system too is that these things just move around, because this will stay on these crops till about early May. Shortly, by mid-May, late May, I'm planting out peppers and such, warm season stuff. So these guys are just going to move on over to wherever the peppers are. They're going to stay on the peppers till about, September or so, when we want to start harvesting peppers. So it'll be just keeping everything really warm, which the peppers love. And then right in September, I can move them over to another part of the field, maybe something like this, where another bed is waiting. And then we're sowing our fall greens, bok choys, maybe some fall lettuce, all kinds of stuff. Here, let me show you some lettuce that overwintered from last year in one of these things. Again, we've had a mild winter, so it's not too great of a feed. I'm not going to claim too many bragging rights here, but look what happens when we open this baby up. Look at that beautiful lettuce. So that was all transplanted last fall, maybe in October. And then I immediately put this over it. Sure, there's a few weeds and such, but they're doing great. Look at that quality of that lettuce. Some romaines, butterheads, oak leaf. Oh man, look at that. So you can be harvesting your fresh lettuce. Yep. And eating it. Anyway, these are called little cloches, from the French word for bell, cloche. They used to be glass bells that Parisian market gardeners would put over individual lettuce heads. Now pretty much we call it any kind of structure like this a cloche. Call it a mini greenhouse, call it a low tunnel, call it what you want. I call it eating crops in the middle of winter. I call it getting a head start on the season. I call it a multi-season aid to growing in a northern latitude, so we're at 45 degrees latitude, so we get a nice summer, but it's not so hot. And sometimes we need a little extra help to get things where they need to be, summer and or winter. Anyway, soak your seeds, get those cold weather seeds started now. give them some protection, and you'll be eating as fast as you darn can from the season's first planting, and or you'll be still feasting on last year's stuff. It's a great system. Enjoy from the fields of Franciscan Montessori. Here we go. Happy gardening as we come into 2025. Bye, everybody.
Hey gardeners, thanks for tuning in to our show today. We'll be right back at it here in just a moment. I just wanted to take a second here to highlight our regular videos and features here on the Urban Gardener channel. Our weekly garden journals, and our incredible featured visits. All right, everybody. Welcome back here to the show. Thank you so much for joining with us here today. I see we've had a few people join in while we were there watching In the Garden with NBC. He's got some pretty cool stuff growing on there. I need to get me one of those wagon train covers like he's got. That's pretty cool. Let's see here. Right on. I see Steam Puzzle jumped into the conversation there. Great to see you. It has been a little while. Good to see you back. Thanks for joining with us today. I see Rick's joining with us from down under there. Right on. Our guest next week's going to be from Australia as well, too. I'll tell you about that here a little bit later in the show. I see Shawnee Grows is in here. Happy Sunday to you. Great to see you. Got Mill Creek Market. Awesome. Excellent. Great to see all of you here. See Gmod Grows Hard in the Garden along with everybody else. Just so awesome to see all of you here. Now, again, remember, we got Gardener Scott jumping in here in just a couple minutes here, and I want to make sure you all are jumping in with those garden questions. I already got one I see in there I put away for Scott here in just a little bit here. But if you all have some questions, if you got anything you're wondering about in the garden, something, again, like I was saying earlier, maybe you're thinking about something that, kind of what was going on in the garden last season, and you're still kind of wondering how you should take care of it, or what maybe a strategy you should be thinking about for this next gardening season. So maybe something like that. Maybe there's something you're thinking about coming up that you want to do different or something like that in the garden, and you got some questions about that. Jump into our comments there and leave a question there. And if you put it in big, bold capital letters, I'll be able to notice it from the conversation, but I'll keep my eye out for them if they're not. But definitely jump in there with some gardening questions that we can ask of Gardener Scott when he gets here on the show in just one moment. I did want to say yesterday on the show, if you didn't get a chance to check out yesterday's show, a lot of people always comment about the background of what I've got growing on here, all these plants and all of that you see in the background here on the show. So yesterday was our 100th show. Like I said, we had Wendy Fan on yesterday. It was our 100th Let's Get Growing show, and so I thought it would be kind of fun to kind of give give you all a little video tour, kind of a plant tour of everything that I've got growing on back here behind us on the set there. So I got you all nice up and close with everything, and so you can check out all the plants and see them, even some of the ones that aren't doing very well either. Not everything back there is as beautiful as it kind of seems from a distance, you know. But it was real fun to get it and show you guys all that. I think I'll cut it up and maybe put it out as a video or something for everybody as well. But there was one plant I showed that I got from our guest yesterday, Wendy Fan, towards the end of that video, and I mentioned it to everybody. And I forgot to ask her what it was on the show, but I did notice in the comments that she did mention what it was. So I did want to mention that for everybody, because I've actually got a little small version of it here real quick. But it's called a Madeira vine. And it's a really, it makes for, right, you know, I got this from her, and it was growing outdoors for her in Southern California. And it grew, I mean, just this big vines, and it just forms these little nubs kind of on the vines that form out on some of the older vines. And they kind of got, you know, little, like, almost like what look like root nodes coming off of them. And she gave me one of those when I visited her a couple of years ago. And I mentioned in the video that I put it in my pocket, and I forgot about this thing for, you know, I mean, well over a month or so. It must have been before I found this in my jacket pocket that I had. And so I didn't know. I mean, it still was all wrinkly and seemed maybe it could be okay. I didn't look all that well, but I did. I put it in some soil, and it started growing. It's been growing vines and vines for the last couple of years and everything. And then I actually took a piece off and started a whole new one here with this one as well too, to start up another one, because not only did it grow well for her in her outdoor garden down there, but it grows really nicely. And for me, here is an indoor plant in the house. So it's a really fun little vine. And yeah, get a chance to check out one of those. I don't know if something maybe Wendy should think about offering in her shop that she has as well too, because she offers some pretty cool kind of plants that you can get from her at wendyland.com. All right, everybody, let's get moving along today. I just kind of wanted to mention that too, because I know I mentioned it on the video, so I wanted to make sure if anybody was wondering that yeah, that's the Madeira vine. Right on, right on. All right, well, it's time, everybody, for all your questions answered. All right. Let's welcome back to the show our good friend Scott Wilson from the Gardener Scott channel, joining with us here. Like we said, really great. So much fun this last year. We kind of talked about last year a little bit. Last time you were on the show, it was in last December, and we just kind of had fun with this. It's been really a great time each and every second Sunday of the month to get together with you, have a conversation about our gardens, and have you here too to answer some gardening questions of the viewers. And again, just have a really fun gardening conversation and catch up every now and then. It's really kind of fun.
It is fun, and it's great to be here in the beginning of 2025 after doing a bunch of these last year, and hopefully we'll be doing a bunch more this year.
Yeah. Like I said, lots of fun things to, get talking about too, because there's, maybe the middle of winter time, but there's still a lot of kind of fun and interesting things happening and growing on in our gardens. But real quick though, how were your holidays? I mean, last time we saw you was beginning of December, just before. So the holidays go good for you there?
Yeah, great holidays. Got to spend time with family and friends. Christmas dinner was at my daughter's, which is nice. I've kind of passed the torch to that. At the end of the month, end of December, I spent a little bit of time in San Diego and got to see some family and friends down there as well. So wonderful way to start the new year. New Year's Day was a fantastic day. That's actually my daughter's birthday. and now we're just getting into the rest of the year after a good holiday season.
Yeah, yeah. Yep. Excellent. That's awesome to hear too. I get what you're saying too about passing some of that stuff along though too to the kids. You know, my daughter already, she's taken over the holiday dinners and
That's
things like
nice.
that. She does far better job than I ever did. It is great and getting to spend that with my granddaughter as well too.
Yep.
This first holiday too.
That's
So that
always a
was,
highlight.
oh man, it's so much fun. So much fun. So good to hear you had a great holidays. And yeah, so now again, like we're saying, we're moving on. It's now 2025. It's time to start thinking about what's ahead for us and all of that, and especially for all of us gardeners. We got a lot growing on even. I'm sure as you do most of the time too, the photo that you use for your background there, right? That's your current state of your garden right
Yeah,
now.
this is actually, I took this last week. Actually, I didn't take one this morning. I actually have snow on the ground, a couple inches of snow.
Okay, yeah.
It's been really cold and snowy, and I haven't been going out much. And when I do go out, I forget to take the camera because it's cold and snowy. So this was right before the snows came. There's some light frost on the ground, but yeah, this is what my garden looks like at this time of year.
Kind of answers Dusty's question, I think there.
Yeah. Yeah, we've
Yeah.
had 3 days, I think, in the last week where it has snowed. And it snowed yesterday, didn't really leave much on the ground, but we had a couple inches midweek, and it hasn't gotten above freezing really for
Right.
about a couple weeks now. So most of the snow that has fallen is still on the ground.
All right. Yeah, yeah. And that's what I was kind of thinking about earlier too, as I was kind of talking about some of the things for me. I've got, I'm having a pretty mild winter so far. There's probably some things I could probably actually just jump out there and start getting going if I'm really,
That's
bold enough,
nice.
a little bold enough if I want to. Yeah, but it just kind of depends on where we're living, what region we're in, and all of that, to what we're able and capable of doing in the garden.
Yep.
And for a lot of folks like yourself too, living up there in Colorado, like that, snowy, cold, just there isn't much you're getting away with doing. Do you have anything that's kind of covered, kind of like what Mark was showing
No, it's still too cold. My night temperatures are getting down to single digits. So,
Mhm.
and tonight I think it's supposed to get down to 8 degrees. So, like he was talking about,
Yeah.
plastic covers are great, but they only add 4 or 5 degrees Fahrenheit to the air
Mm,
temperature.
yeah.
So, if you're at or slightly below freezing, then they can be very effective, and the ground isn't frozen, and you can put your peas and your spinach seeds in. But for me, when it gets down to 8 degrees Fahrenheit, that
Yeah.
extra 4 degrees protection is still way too cold to do
Yeah.
anything. And my soil is frozen. All of my beds are frozen solid. And
Mhm.
so even if the temperature increases, the soil just, I literally can't dig in it to put a seed in.
Yeah.
So nothing. But in the greenhouse, I still have some strawberries in my green
Yeah.
stock. They're still green and growing, and I've got some Chicago figs that surprisingly are budding and beginning to send out a few leaves. So even though it gets very cold in the greenhouse, down to about 18 degrees Fahrenheit,
Yeah.
it's still suitable enough for those hardy plants to be doing okay.
Yeah, yeah. Right on, right on. Yeah, I was gonna ask about, what was growing in the greenhouse, so, yeah, that's perfect. Got,
Yeah.
strawberries going and all of that, all ready to go. But, yeah, yeah, I need to start building and utilizing some of the cover. I've got a couple of things. I've got kinda like this kinda cool, like, roofing, like, where someone would have, like, a sunroof kind of thing that
Okay.
someone gave me a couple of these covers, and they almost perfectly fit over these elevated raised beds that I've got. But
Yeah.
still, at
Use
the
them.
same time, because they're elevated raised beds, I'm worried about the same situation where if we do have a freeze over a couple of days or something, which could still happen, then those things turn into just big old ice blocks.
Yeah.
And nothing really can, so yeah, I might still give it a few more weeks before I get outside just to be sure. But yeah, it's kind of nice for those folks who do. Like I was saying, we got Wendy Fan on the show yesterday, and she's grows out of Southern California, so we've got all of those gardeners to kind of keep us going along during the wintertime when we can't grow. And we can watch them grow. How lucky, right? Excellent. So right on. Let's see here. I want to make sure I know we got a couple of
I've been
questions
seeing a
that
few
jumped in
questions
here.
pop up.
Yeah. First one actually was from just a little bit earlier. I know I saw a question mark, so I want to make sure I marked it. There we go. John Jude was question for Gardener Scott: is it best to start onion seeds in the seed starting mixture or something else?
So I'm a big fan of seed starting mixtures, which is basically just peat moss and perlite, or cocoa coir and vermiculite, because it's light, it holds moisture well, and seeds need a consistent moisture level to germinate. And then I'll take whatever seedlings I start in that seed starting mix and then move them into the potting mix. The starting in a potting mix, especially the potting mixes that you typically buy, the generic mixes at the store, tend to be kind of chunky. They've got a lot of little wood bits in them, and that's not ideal for starting seeds. And so I did a video a couple years ago where I started onions from seed, and that's kind of the approach that I take generally with onions. Is I'll take a flat, just like a baking pan kind of tray, and then fill it with just basic seed starter mix, start the onions, and then I'll take those out and put them into a potting soil mix after they've started growing. I experiment a little bit. If I do start in a potting mix, I make sure I sift it to get all of those chunks out. So I've done both ways, where I start the onions in a seed starter mix and then transplant, or I start in a potting mix, and it's kind of 50-50 as to which one. They both work fine. It's just a question of what you prefer.
Right on. Yeah. And do you and I've heard before, and I've tried before and do this every now and then, but cutting back the onion starts a bit before you transplant at all. Do you do anything like
I
that?
don't. I've seen a lot of that as well, and I've read that when they get to about 6 inches, if they're still growing inside, you give them a trim, a haircut before you put them outside. But if you harden them off, and I think that's the big issue and why people think you need to give them a haircut. The general assumption, particularly with something like onions, is they grow into little plants, just like you would get the starts at a nursery if you wanted to buy a bunch of the onions that you're going to plant, little plants. And the tops are always shriveled. And if you just take your onion plants and put them directly into the garden, the tips are gonna shrivel as well. So it seems to make sense. Just go ahead and give them a haircut. But if you harden them off like any other plant you're going to be transplanting, then there's no reason you're going to lose the tips of those onions. And so anything you cut off is lost photosynthesis, and it adds stress to the plant anytime you do a pruning. So when I transplant, I transplant the whole plant. I don't do a trim, and I don't have an issue with the tips browning because I do go through a hardening off process.
Yeah, that is a big important part of an indoor starting anything. For me, my big project right now this week is to finally get I've got them all picked out. Mind you, I know all of us gardeners, I think we even touched on this last time you were here, we love getting all these seeds and have our seed collections, and we're going through and we're picking them out. Right now, I've selected down to the I think around 15 different pepper varieties I'm going to grow.
Cool.
So that's the project we're getting started with 2025, is getting them growing indoors. So as I know for sure as we move closer to spring and that sort of thing, as we start really moving outdoors, we'll be talking a lot more about hardening off different plants, because that is a real important process in transferring our plants from the indoor starts that we do to getting them outdoors. And onions, just like anything else as well, you should be taking care of that hardening off procedure.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see here. Maybe you can here we are. Bowtie Life says, how soon will we get to hear about those new posts in your garden over by the greenhouse? He says, are you holding out another interesting project?
Yeah, I mentioned them in a live stream I did, I think at the end of last month, and showed this picture. That's why I commented. So I'll be doing videos on that, but I'll be making a hidden garden. So those posts are in place, and I'll be building a fence around that area, and then having a water feature and some plants that actually will benefit from shade, because I don't have shade anywhere in my garden. And so much more to come on that topic, but that's a major topic, and there will probably be a few videos on it, because there's still a lot of work to finish that fence.
Yeah. We talked a bit about that, I think, last time as well too. This hidden garden that you're going to do, which is kind of a fun project,
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Every garden should have that really cool little escape spot that we can go to and just kind of really enjoy things, especially water features. I love water features. I've got several different little waterfall type things that I have set up as well too, because it really adds to that nature feel of what our garden space is supposed to be. Is like, especially if we don't have water near us, too, having these cool little water features in your garden is so awesome.
Yep.
Okay, let's see here. I want to make sure. I know there was another one here. Oh, Connie Davison. Let's see what it says. Question: because of space, I decided to plant dwarf tomatoes this year. Have you tried growing them, and how did they do?
In fact, last year I grew 4 different varieties of dwarf tomatoes, and they did great. The key with the dwarf tomatoes that I've learned is, even though they're dwarf tomatoes and much smaller than indeterminate tomatoes and most determinate tomatoes, they can still get pretty good size. So I still needed to use a little bit of trellising. I just used bamboo and twine. But the biggest dwarf tomatoes I had grew 3 feet tall, and they still need a little bit of staking when they get to that point. But the fruit is full size, and I grew some smaller cherry tomato types and some bigger, not quite beefsteak, more medium size. Dwarf Emerald was one that actually did probably the best, and it's actually a green tomato, a full-size tomato, but on a dwarf plant, and you just grow them just like you would any other tomato, and I would recommend them. Some of the ones that I grew didn't quite do as well. I wouldn't necessarily recommend them, but yeah, I'm always trying new stuff like that. So chalk up dwarf tomatoes to the list. I've done almost everything that you could think of.
Ones I've actually been really liking are these actual, you got dwarf tomatoes, but there's a few varieties out there. I know Baker Creek sells a variety that I grow called Orange Hat, and they're a micro dwarf tomato.
Oh, okay.
And they maybe get about this big, and they put off a bunch of and continuously put off like a indeterminate almost. They just keep growing, but not very, the stalks just don't get very tall, but they keep putting out tomatoes throughout the season. I grew them this last year, and they did really well right out of, I think, just basically I have like a 3-gallon little buckets that I have, and I got them hanging up kind of in my back of my carport. And I actually grew 3 of them in they're kind of nice round buckets. So I grew 3 of them in each, and they made nice, like a nice bush for sure, a nice cool bush of tomatoes. And I know there are a couple of other varieties out there. I can't think of right now on the top of my head of other varieties of the micro dwarfs that I think some other companies sell as well too. But yeah, they're really good. The orange hats are just like these really delicious, sweet little orange cherry tomatoes.
Nice.
And yeah, really fun to grow too. If you got even more limited space, maybe it's only a ledge or something like that, you can maybe get something into. Those are really cool if you want to do some tomatoes. But 3 feet ain't too bad either. That's when it comes down to it, and get them to go a bit vertical so you can get maybe several into a space.
And that's what I did. Most of them were about 2 feet tall. But yeah, I just staked them so they grew vertically and didn't sprawl too much, and piece of cake.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, right on. Great question, everybody. Thank you so much for the questions here. And let's see here. Try to get to this page. Okay. Rick was actually asking, do you have some garlic in the bed?
Yeah, I do have.
How you don't have anything growing out there.
Yeah, I don't have anything growing, and the garlic is dormant because the soil is frozen. But yeah, I do have a full bed of garlic. A lot of music garlic is my favorite. So I put a lot of music in the ground this year.
Yeah. I was showing last week, I start the Saturday show with kind of like a little clip from either the garden or something. And last week I was showing the little tips of my garlic that are popping out, from the garden space. And maybe I'll get your take on it as well too, because this is something you hear all the time, especially this time of year. In fact, is that my garlic's growing. It shouldn't, they think in some sense that it shouldn't be, because it's dormant in some sense. But I would almost kind of classify it in some regions for us, they're kind of semi-dormant in a way.
Yeah.
They grow a little bit, but not too much. But if you got tips of your garlic out there, that's not a bad thing, is it?
Not necessarily. It all depends on where you live and what the rest of your winter is going to look like. And so plants, they are very driven by temperature of the entire spectrum. And so if your garlic has started growing, that says your soil is not frozen and that the cloves are awake and warm enough to start growing. I've got pictures in one of my garlic videos of the garlic growing in snow, because we get late snows here in Colorado. So the soil is warm enough for the plant to grow. It will grow. And even if you get more snow or more cold, the garlic will just slough it off. It's not that big a deal. If you live in a very cold region like I do, and you've been covering your beds, and then you have a really hot spell and they start growing, I'd be a little more concerned if there's more cold coming, severe cold. And so you just cover those tips with a mulch like straw, and it's no big deal. They'll just keep going. So early in the season, like if you plant too early and they start growing, then some of those leaves can be killed off in the winter. But
that's what I was thinking about too.
If the harshest days of winter are already past and they're growing, I wouldn't be too concerned about it.
Yeah. So again, regionally, we got to be thinking about things and again, in those colder regions, we talk about getting out in fall to plant your garlic out. And most of the time I notice people asking about, is it too late for me to plant the garlic? Is it too late? So a lot of people wait till later, but there's folks out there who can't wait. It's like me, as we're getting ready to get started, I can't wait to get my my pepper seeds going and getting this next garden going and all of that. But we can get that garlic out just a little too early though, because of kind of what you're talking about. They're going to start growing. they'll start growing those root systems and popping out the green, and then you'll get a lot of green growth if you get too early, and then that could pose some of those issues, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can get out a little bit too early if you're in a colder region. But garlic gets a lot more trickier for people growing more in the south, though, right? In these warmer regions.
Most garlic varieties need some cold temperatures. Most bulbing plants need that exposure to the cold for a period of time. So to get the garlic bulb, the clove needs some exposure to cold. And so one of the tricks when you are growing in a region that doesn't get the winter cold is you just put your cloves in the refrigerator for a month or two before you plant, and that exposes them to the cold that they need. Then you put them in the ground and then they'll start growing. But there are very specific varieties that have actually been bred to grow in the southern regions, like Cajun, literally Cajun varieties, Louisiana Cajun. There are varieties of garlic that are really suitable for warmer regions.
Yeah, and that comes down to a lot of everything else too. If you're thinking about warmer, the different things grow in different type of temperatures better than others. There's cooler season crops, there's warmer season crops, but even within those individual types of things that we would grow, different varieties of them can handle warmer regions versus colder regions too. So if you are in a warmer climate, that probably is a good idea, is to be looking for those things that are more adapted to warmer climates.
And I said Cajun, it's actually Creole garlic is the different types that are suitable for that area.
Yeah. And remember, everybody, if you got those questions, I want to see those questions there in the
I know there's a few others up there that I saw pass by a while back.
Am I missing? I hope I'm not missing any. If I am, if I've missed your question though, too, just kind of type it back in as well too, and definitely don't feel bad about doing that at all, because I do sometimes with the conversation as well as trying to watch the other chat as well too. Sometimes they will get by me and everything too, but definitely drop those in there.
Yeah, and if you don't have that issue.
Yeah, so if I don't answer your question, definitely pop it back in without a problem. I'll try to keep a better eye out as we keep moving forward here. Unless and then too, if there is ever anything that you do see or something like that you want to jump in about too as well. One of the other things I wanted to kind of talk with you about too, we've touched on before, I think probably even last year as well. And I know it was just a year or two ago, you helped work on the hardiness zones. And I thought this would be a good time of year to maybe touch on this and talk about this just a little bit as well too, because hardiness zones are really meant for this time of year, right?
Exactly.
They're really about perennials in a sense when we're talking about things, and then what temperature or what zone that they can best suit their needs. And and it can range from just different ranges, because again too, some zones might be a little colder one year versus others, but you just want something that fits this range and in the perennial type of thing. And again too, a lot of us we're still trying to grow. There's lots of perennial food crops out there, food things that we can grow. So again too, we want to be thinking about the zones for them. And like I said, because one zone can be so different from others, right? Even though, our winters can be different, or, our frost can be a little bit different, but for the most part, we are talking about this time of year, right?
Exactly. And that's a common misconception about the zones. The hardiness zones is determined by the USDA, is all about the average coldest temperature. And that's all about the winter time. And so many gardeners, I get questions about this all the time, asking about tomatoes or pumpkins or melons. And they're saying, I'm in zone 7A. Well, it means nothing when you're talking about your tomatoes and your pumpkins and your melons, because those are all summer crops.
Yeah.
And the zones are purely about the cold temperatures, and it's the coldest on average. And so, like you said, it's a range, and over a period
awesome.
of years.
Yeah.
And so the hardiness zone map is actually based on 30 years of data. So it's 30 years average, and it's a rolling window, but it's actually pretty accurate. So my zone did not change in the new map at my location. It changed just a couple miles away, but it didn't change in my garden. And it's actually pretty accurate. So I'm in zone 5B, which
Yeah.
means on average, my coldest winter temperature is minus 15 degrees Fahrenheit. And so the last couple winters in particular, it was relatively mild. It was relatively warm as far as speaking historically. And each of the last two winters had one day when it
Yeah.
actually got down to minus 15. So the track record holds. The average is still there, but we're only talking about a single day in the winter that can determine your winter hardiness zone for the next 30 years, basically. And so that's an important consideration. It's the garlic, and it's
Yeah.
the perennials, and it's fruit trees, and it's those kind of things that are going to be in the ground over the winter.
Yeah.
And that's what the hardiness zone is all about, because the plants that are exposed to cold have varying degrees of resistance to the cold. And so I always think of rosemary, for instance. I love growing rosemary,
Yeah.
but most of the rosemary plants that we grow in our garden are Mediterranean historically, and they're suitable for zone 6 and 7 for most of the varieties we grow. I can't grow rosemary in my garden. I try, but every year when it gets down into those zone 5 severe cold temperatures, that's enough to kill the rosemary plants. So for me to grow rosemary, I have to grow it in a pot, bring it indoors, maybe in the greenhouse. And that's the key determination about how a hardiness zone affects you. It's because of the plants you're growing and how hardy they are, and whether they match what your coldest winter temperatures are going to reach on average.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, like you said, lots of things can fit in different ranges as well too. As you know, we kind of do a little kind of like you said, maybe something in a greenhouse. Maybe you can get it away with bring it into a part of your house or something like that if you have for doing that in order
or like the plastic
keep them
hoops
through the coldest. Yeah,
yeah. We were talking about the plastic raising 4 to 5 degrees. That's half a zone. So
yeah,
if you're in zone 5B and you use plastic covers, you could theoretically raise the hardiness
yeah,
level within that bed to 6A. And
mhm.
that's one of those ways that some gardeners can grow plants that are kind of on the edge, is by covering them up or putting some type of insulation around them.
Yeah, yeah, and again too, another kind of angle at it is also, some of these, like you're saying, fruit trees,
Mhm.
some berry bushes and things like that, and some of the things we don't think about with some of them is that they kind of require an amount of time in a freezing area too, because of their adaptation to the areas that they live in and in these zones.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, like apples, for instance, are a prime example. They need chill hours. They need hundreds of hours with the temperature below 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's why you don't see apples growing in Florida or South Texas, unless there's some very unique variety, because those trees in the far south are not getting those hours of cold that are going to make the difference. So, hey, Tony.
Yeah, yes. Just saw Tony jumping in there. All right. All right. Great to see you, Tony. Thanks for joining with us here today. Thank you, everybody else, for being here today. I see everybody's having a great conversation there. Again, if you got any questions for Scott here about gardening, jump in, ask a garden question here. And let's see here. Also, I did see something too again, and I think
Big
this
Will
kind of
Dog
goes with
just posted a question. I just look for all caps. That's how I know there's been some that have been passing by.
there's something in here. Yep, there we go. Let's make sure we get that in here. You made me consider normal videos where some of my gardening buddies and I just chat about what we're doing. Is 15 minutes on any tips on
One-on-one.
starting?
Yeah.
Just a thought so far. So you asking about doing videos, right?
Yeah, I would say just do it.
About doing
That's always
15 minutes.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
15-minute one-on-one with some of your gardener
Yeah.
friends, kind of like we're doing right now. Just do it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I can guarantee you, and you know this, Enoch, you've been doing this a long time, and I've been doing it a
That's
long
right.
time. Your first videos are not going to be good, but it doesn't matter because no one's going to see them until you build an audience. And so you
Or
just
you
got
or
to
you
do
point
it.
them out to people like Jay, and she goes and searches for it
That's
real
right.
quick and puts it into the comment section,
That's
which
right.
I have no problem with. I think it's funny. I look back on it every now and then just for a little humility, but you're absolutely right. Those
Yeah,
first videos aren't the best that we do, but that was the advice that was given to me as well too.
yeah,
'Cause
and
I
because you got
barely
to
even
learn
knew how
how to
to
do it.
use the editor. I barely knew anything,
Exactly.
but I had this interest in because people are telling me they thought it was interesting, about the garden space and the rooftop garden I had and all of that. And I was just really kind of, my passion was really growing about this stuff, and I just kind of wanted to share it. So,
Exactly.
that was the advice given to me was like, yeah, just do it. Grab some video, learn how to grab the video off your phone camera or whatever,
Yeah.
pop it onto the computer, figure that out, and then find a nice little video editor to play around with. I tried a few different ones till I found one I was comfortable with, and
Yeah.
boom, I was off and running. And again, like I said, don't let how you feel about yourself on the camera get in the way either, because
Exactly.
like you
And
said, you
so many
just got to
people
do it.
think it, they see, my channel. I've been doing this for 12 years or so, and I have hundreds of videos. You've been doing this for years. You do it every Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah,
And so they see, this polished look to the videos, and like you have all the
yeah,
clips that you have back and forth, and they think that that's what it needs to be on day one,
right. No,
but it isn't.
no, no.
You get that way, and I have watched a lot of videos, of course, about how to make videos.
Yeah,
It was pretty much video number 75, and I remember it because it's like I've made 75 videos, and now I think I've got it figured out. So
right.
it took years to reach the point that I was actually comfortable with the videos I was making, with how
Mhm.
I was making them, and then that set the stage. And beyond that point, by the time I got to 100 videos, my channel had taken off because all the work I had done to get to that point
Yeah,
was needed to find an audience and then have people actually start watching the videos. So
yeah,
whenever I
that's true
refer
too.
when I
Yeah.
refer someone to a video of mine, it's usually number 100 or later. Like you
There
said,
you go.
I rarely tell someone to watch one of
Yeah.
those earlier videos.
Yeah, but I never take them down though
Oh
either
no,
because like I
yeah,
said, it's just they're
and you
there
can see the
for
progression.
specifically maybe kind of this sort of situation is to say, hey, you could definitely look back, for someone like Will who's interested in getting started himself or doing more with what he's doing. Definitely you go back and look at some of those if you want to kind of see
Yeah,
from where I've come from in some sense and how things have changed for me and even in some ways too there's this point where I think we're a lot more comfortable, and this is kind of something where we've gotten a bit more used to or whatever. But I saw Tony put it here as well too. He's like, sometimes your
that's right.
475th is integrity,
That's
and then
right.
he later he says here just a minute later he says, or even the
Exactly.
575th. If
Yeah.
you've been around as long as Tony has and been doing, I've been watching Tony's way years before I got started. And in fact, this last Friday, January 10th, which I learned years
I
after
saw
I
that.
but
Congratulations.
January 10th was when I started all of this. So this was 8 years ago that I started the Urban Gardener and got onto this really fun gardening adventure, you know, sharing and doing all of that. And yeah, and with those videos too, as I was mentioning, everybody in the chat as well too, is I haven't put out videos much for a while. So this is kind of hopefully my jump back into things, and
There you go.
hopefully we can get back into doing some regular coverage of what we've got growing on here, you know, on our channel as well too throughout the year. So in my sense, I've kind of got to get used to it a little bit more again too, you know, because even a little break like that from actually doing actual videos versus live stream where I can just get on here and talk and ramble like I am right now. But
well,
you know, doing the
I saw that,
videos is a little different, and I'm gonna have to get a little back to used to it in my groove again too.
you know, and to Tony's point and all the rest of it, you know, it's when we start trying new things and maybe try to mix it up a little bit. And so the follow up to Will's question, it's when you're trying something new. So yeah, you've been making videos, you got the basics down, but it's when you make that shift to like doing a 15-minute one-on-one. That's what I mean when I say
Mhm.
just do it. You know, I
Yeah,
went
yeah,
back to watch my very first live stream recently, and you know, some of the people that are on now probably
yeah,
were there in the beginning. There's still some people that have been following me for 4 years of live streams, but that first live stream I did was nothing like what I do now. And that's why I say you just got to do it. You got to try that new format, even if you're not sure how to do it, even if you know all the rest of the stuff how to do it. Whenever you try something new, just do it.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And yeah, you know, it can be a lot of fun, set you off on a whole new adventure in your life, like it has for me. You
Mhm.
know, I was having fun with gardening as it was beforehand and all of that, but then, you know, I got to doing this, and now have really kind of connected with the gardening community in such a way, you know, by putting myself out there that, you know, I really couldn't imagine. You know, I've always said that or at least over the last couple of years, you know, that if you told me that I'd be here doing a talk show out of my living room on the weekends, and sharing my garden spaces with this great
Yeah.
wider gardening community, I would have told you you were nuts years ago. But here I am, and all because I just jumped in and got started doing it.
Yep.
And I'm sure that you'll find that just as much fun on your own adventure as well too. So get
Yeah.
out there and do it for sure.
And don't worry, you know, so I've been gradually making a shift towards doing like tour videos or botanic garden videos where I'll go somewhere and I'll film it, and they don't get many views. I mean, most of my videos get quite a few views, but when I do these tour videos, they're not as popular, but I still like doing them. That's a
Hmm.
direction I want to keep heading. And even though they're not popular and they don't get the views, I'm still going to keep doing it
Yeah.
until I figure out just exactly is the best way to do them for both me and the audience. So
Yeah.
it's so easy. That's why I said, you know, no one will see it because I've seen it. I mean, and the same with cooking. I've got cooking videos that are my worst performing videos that
Oh, I bet.
nobody has seen. But
Right.
some of my newer cooking videos do a little bit better. So you just have to accept that no one's going to see it, but if it's something you want to do, you, you know,
Yeah.
most of what we do on YouTube, we do for ourselves in the process of
Mhm.
trying to help out other people.
Yeah, yeah, and in some sense too, you kind of going back to what you were saying a little bit as well too, is that you want, you know, just getting started in doing that, you got a channel that you're just going with, try different things,
Yeah.
you know, and run those out there and see what does kind of click, you know, what is going to start gaining traction for you. Sometimes, you know, there's garden channels I've talked to where that's kind of what they've done is
Hmm.
they started out with a couple of different channels and kind of went in a couple of different directions with the different things and tried different things to see what kind of worked best.
Yep.
And for a lot of the ones that I've talked to, it would just happen to be the gardening that really got people and people connected with the most and stuff. So they went in that direction. But I'm sure there's a lot of other people who probably started with different ones and went into a different direction. But it's still it still could be a part of what you really like to do. You know what I mean? So if there are different things you can play with and do that. Or more so what you're saying though too is some of those things that kind of work almost together. So like you're saying, some cooking, cooking makes sense with gardening because we're getting the, that sort of thing. But maybe, cooking isn't the direction, that sort of stuff. But you want to test it out and play around with it, because maybe you just might have an audience that you've started with, or that really starts to connect with it, that does connect with the cooking versus the gardening. And then you can kind of maybe move more to that direction if that's what it is. And you'll be doing something you really enjoy.
Absolutely.
Right on, right on. There was a question here, just so I remember a little bit back ago, we were talking about hardiness zones. Oh yes, let's see here. It says help with growing Brandywine tomatoes.
And so again,
Charlotte, North Carolina, but she mentioned zones there as well.
Yeah, zone 8B, 8A has no bearing. It doesn't matter at all about growing Brandywine tomatoes. Again, the hardiness zone is purely a winter number. What's more important is if you said help growing Brandywine tomatoes, Charlotte, North Carolina, sandy soil, short growing season. Those are the kind of things that are important. So for instance, for me, I would say, what would I do about growing Brandywine tomatoes in Colorado with a 130-day growing season? That's really the most important factor. How long is your growing season? Brandywine tomatoes, a nice big beefsteak.
Yeah,
it's going to take a while. And so, when you look at a seed packet of Brandywine, it's probably going to say 90, maybe even 100 days to harvest. That's when everything is right and you don't have any pest damage and the soil is good and the weather is good. It's going to take 3.5 months before you get tomatoes. I've tried growing Brandywine and I can't. My season is just too short. But in North Carolina, it should be a long enough season with no doubt to grow Brandywine. But now you get back to those other concerns like your soil. If your soil is sandy, if your soil is clayey, then you want to put some organic matter into it and make the soil suitable for growing the tomatoes. And you got to make sure that you've got good drainage and that the spot has enough sun. All of those general gardening rules apply, whether it's a Brandywine tomato or another. And even then, it might not work. The thing about the tomatoes, one reason I love Black Krim tomatoes so much is they do well in my short season with cool temperatures moving into fall. And not all tomatoes can do that. And so, the big beefsteak tomatoes need a longer season. But another important factor, we kind of touched on this when we were first talking about temperature. The soil temperature needs to be warm enough. And so a lot of people will start tomatoes weeks too soon because the soil hasn't warmed up to the point that the tomato's happy. So your outdoor air temperature may be fine. You may be thinking it's okay to put tomatoes in the ground, but until the soil temperature is about 70 degrees Fahrenheit, the tomatoes aren't going to be happy. And so you got to make sure that you don't start the tomatoes too soon and that the soil that they're growing in is adequate. And then you should be able to grow anything, including Brandywine.
Yeah. And then another kind of key there too is also, again, maybe just touch on the zone thing just a little bit more for a second. You're in, or she's in North Carolina there. I'm over in Southern Oregon. My zone is the same 8B. So for those different, and I'm sure we've got different frost dates, last frost dates, which is really the key here when we're looking at that. And what's also going to help establish how long your growing season really is, right? Is the last frost or the last frost date and then your first frost date, right?
Exactly. And so when you look at just hardiness zones, Seattle, Washington is the same hardiness zone as Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah, yeah.
But the conditions are completely different. You've got the cloudy days with lots of rain and cooler temperatures up in Seattle, and you've got the hot, muggy days down in Georgia, but it's the same zone. So that's
Yeah.
why we don't look at zones when we're talking about our summer garden at all. You're exactly right. When I talk about the length of the growing season, I'm talking about how much time from your last frost in spring to your first frost in fall. And so for me in my garden, it's about 130 days, give or take a little bit each year. And that's my biggest limiting factor. But just because you hit your last frost does not mean that you can put plants in the ground. So my last frost comes in the middle of May, but my
Yeah.
temperature of the soil is still so cold that I can't put
Mhm.
any of those plants in until June.
Yep.
So the technical length of my growing season might be 130 days, but because I have to wait 2, sometimes 3 weeks before I even get the plants in the ground, my effective length of the
Yeah.
growing season is closer to 100 days. And
Yeah.
so that's why trying to grow a 90 or 100-day tomato for me just doesn't make sense, because even when everything is perfect, I really only have about 100 days where the soil temperature and the air temperature match up to be able to satisfy what the plants need.
Yeah, yeah. So, just again too, the last and first frost dates kind of give you a range to look at, but really ultimately you might want to get I'm sure they have soil thermometers or some sort of
Yeah,
things
in
that you
fact,
can find.
yeah, Bowtie Life has a point right now that we can talk about. Uh, I I just started using a meat probe, and so those little probes that you use to stick in a steak to see if it's done, or you put in your chicken to see if it's done.
Yeah.
I've used those for years to determine what my soil temperature is. Now,
Yeah.
I have moved to a compost thermometer. It's a little bit longer, it's a little sturdier, and that's what I do most of my soil measurements at now. But yeah, notable successes is what he says, and that's the key. If you put the
Mhm.
plants in the ground at the right time, based on air and soil temperature, you will have notable successes.
All right, all right. So, what do you know? Let's see. Lieutenant asked also to best crops to grow in the South.
Uh,
Any good
and
good suggestions for the South?
so
They're
the
a warmer
South
climate, right?
is 3,000 miles wide and 1,000 miles, or 3,000 miles long and 1,000 miles wide. So what you've got to find out is what your region
Yeah.
has. So when we talk the South, we could talk Florida or Arizona. And those are two totally different growing environments. And so the key wherever you're growing is to try not to generalize too much, and
Yeah.
to really focus more on what your climate is and what weather patterns you have in your region of the South.
Yeah. Yep.
And so my brother lives in Arizona, and he gets 120-degree temperatures day after day after
Mhm.
day in the summer. So they effectively have to shut down all growing during the summer because it's just too hot. But then you talk about Louisiana. My son lives in Louisiana, the southern Louisiana. And during the summer, they might get to 92, maybe 94 degrees with 90% humidity. They can actually keep growing all summer long because they don't have that excessive heat. And so, what my son can grow in Louisiana in the middle of summer does not match at all what my brother could even think about growing in Arizona during the summer. So look regionally and then start looking locally, and go to a nursery, talk to your master gardeners and see what they recommend for your
Yeah.
region. And
Yeah,
generally,
that's another great suggestion, and,
we're talking
local
hardiness
nurseries
zones.
for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So you're not going to be growing some of those perennial plants that I would be growing here in Colorado. I can't grow citrus trees, but you can grow citrus trees in North Carolina. I can't grow uh, a lot of the kumquats and most of those kind of fruits, but you can in North Carolina. But you would possibly be able to grow apple trees, but you'd have to be very selective in the apple trees that you grow. And so you need to match the chill hours that a plant needs, like pomegranates, for instance. I have a pomegranate in a pot. Pomegranates, which can't handle severe cold temperatures, still need some cold temperatures to be able to set the fruit buds. And so talking to your local experts is the best way to figure out what you can grow in your region successfully.
Yeah. And I always suggest to people too is that, because regions are so different from each other, each kind of region you live in should have an extension somewhere, master gardener program that usually, and I know I have a really great one here from our extension that they have, is a guide specifically to our area, Rogue Valley here, Southern Oregon.
Exactly.
And so you can get yourself a really good guide that'll help you for your region, to help you get really a lot more familiar with what are these really kind of important factors to your region where you live versus everywhere else. And then that's where you can get really kind of specific with things too, maybe even more so, because I really like your suggestion too, is the local nurseries where they're actually just, they're mass producing and really growing a lot of these things that are growing in your area, in your region right there. And they're able to help you understand a lot of that stuff as well too.
And it doesn't matter how experienced a gardener you are. When I was working at the school garden, I'm a Colorado master gardener. And so I had a number of volunteers that would work with me, huge garden, growing lots of plants. And I had two master gardeners that were some of my volunteers. One had been a California master gardener. The other had been a Kansas master gardener. And one of the reasons they came to work with me is because they couldn't grow a garden in Colorado. They were very experienced. They were master gardeners, but they knew how to grow plants in California and Kansas respectively. So it's different in Colorado. I have lived in California before I became a master gardener, and just kind of luckily was able to grow plants. But I couldn't go to Kansas and expect to do as well as I do here, and I couldn't expect to go to California and do as well as I do here, because it's very localized. And you're right, all of the extension offices have online fact sheets with lists of the plants, everything from trees and bushes to vegetables and grasses that are all specific for that region. And when you compare the lists, the Colorado list is different than the California list or the Kansas list or the North Carolina list. And that's why it's so important to get with your local experts to find out what is the best to grow.
Yeah, definitely. And I think those are just really great starting points and everything like that. And then, then that'll help you kind of really understand again your region a lot better, because that's really where things really get I guess they get real serious, because now you can really start growing in your garden and having some fun with it. And Lynette says, thank you from
You're welcome. Yeah, I hope that helps. And I should have mentioned the master gardeners probably first, but I tend to like the nurseries better, because the thing about, the biggest critique I have about the master gardener program, and I have dozens and dozens of friends that are master gardeners, but they kind of drink the Kool-Aid, so to speak, where they think the only suitable information comes from extension. And so, master gardeners are taught to disseminate the extension information. And what I've learned is there's a lot more information than what is included in the fact sheets. And so the nurseries, being a business, they have to keep up with trends, and they have to make sure that they're growing plants that will grow in local gardens, or the gardeners won't come back. And so, that's, I think, a key factor, because like even here in Colorado, it's a Colorado master gardener program, but the
Yep.
conditions from the east side of the Rocky Mountains to the conditions on the west side of the Rocky Mountains are completely different. And
Yep.
northern Colorado is different than southern Colorado, but we're all Colorado Master Gardeners, and all the information is still produced from the same university. So that's why localized expertise really, I think, is more important.
Yeah, yeah, and getting again a little bit from here, like a Master Gardener, a website, or like I said, you can go visit, maybe get yourself a guide or something that you can have physical at your house, like a book or something, to get you started and get that understanding going. But then, like you said, the nurseries where people are actually growing things that are actually, really. And I know they do a bit at the Master Gardener place too. I know they do here. They grow for plants, things that they do and all that as well too. So, but nurseries for the experience. But then one other thing as well too, and I know you touched on this maybe a little while back ago too, about where is good to get good information. I know we talked about it a little bit, was that one of the things I'm doing now is I'm not doing or participating really in groups that are too large. So I like Facebook groups. I like community groups like our group. We have a great community group on Facebook, and others have really cool community groups that I like to be involved in because I like the overall gardening community. But I find that some of these large groups out there that are just generalized groups for gardening, just a lot of just misinformation or information that's not helpful at all, that sort of stuff. But I will say too, kind of in connection with the idea of a local Master Gardeners group, or Master Gardeners program that you can actually go to, or go to a website or something. And then these nurseries again that you can go to and all of that, but you can find some local groups. Those are another thing I really promote as well too. So maybe some of your community groups you could talk to and get some help from with people. But local groups, this is where you're going to find people who are literally gardening and have some gardening experience as well too, because they're your neighbors more than likely.
Exactly.
And they've got that experience as well too.
Yeah, I talk all the time about my garden club, and I live outside of Colorado Springs on the plains, and it's austere growing conditions. But the gardening club is, and it kind of ties into what Tony's talking about as well. Where I live is different than just 11 miles to the west. And so this group, this garden club I have is my local garden club, and everybody in the garden club is growing in my neighborhood or close to it. And so as we share information, microclimates are key because you can have such a big difference from one area to another, depending on where you live. That might just be a few miles away. And so when I was much more involved with the Master Gardener program, living in town and talking to garden clubs and teaching classes, I had never really been exposed to what I'm exposed to now. And so it's been very educational growing in all these different regions that I've grown in. But getting the local expertise. There's a garden group on Facebook that I kind of follow along locally. And you're right, it's so big and the information is so general, and some of it is just so wrong for all of us.
And sometimes purposely wrong too as well. And then you get a lot of people who are just purposely not participating in a constructive way. And I had to kind of ban myself from a lot of places because again too, I might feel like, it's sometimes I'm like, but what if this new gardener is asking this question, and then there's just all that sort of thing. And then I start participating and saying, well, this isn't quite correct and that. And then in the long run, I'm not really helping the situation out. So I finally came to the conclusion, like a lot of these just large groups, if it's got more than so many people in it, it's probably going to be kind of rife with a lot of that sort of activity. And it's just not helpful at all. And so I'm down. I like some of the community groups I'm in because, they got great communities based around people who are running those communities and everything. So those are really kind of fun. And then I've got several, and again too, I'm talking more like online Facebook type groups that are local right here to Rogue Valley, the Medford area that I live in, so I've got my neighbors and that sort of stuff that I can turn to. But like you said, though, if you can find physical groups, maybe even getting involved with some community gardens. I know, there's a lot of places like Los Angeles where if you're there and you want to get in a community garden, it might have a waiting list that could take you long time to get in there, sometimes years, to get into. But some communities have community gardens that need people to come down and garden and participate and that sort of stuff. And if you really like gardening and have a passion for growing, maybe your community needs an extra gardener in its community garden. And that's another type of way to kind of interact with other gardeners in your area to be able to, just kind of gain experience or learn from experience that's localized to you and what really matters for your growing experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, right on. I love it when you can't just help but just agree. It's just wonderful, Scott. I love it.
I'm here to please, I suppose. But when it's accurate information, it's easy to agree. Bowtie Life has just posted a comment that and I've said this many times. I know he's heard me say this before as well.
Is it this one here?
Yeah, that just because someone makes a video, and even if it's a reputable source that is saying something, I've got a video. I'm sure Jay's going to find it here in a minute. That is where I say, don't trust what I say. Don't trust my information just because I say it.
Yeah,
it's not because I might be wrong or that you might disagree. It's because you should try to avoid single source information. And so many gardeners, especially new gardeners, find that good source. And 98% of the information might be accurate and might be good. But when you get into that pattern of always listening to that same person, then when the misinformation comes out, it could be an issue and it could be wrong for you. It might be right for them, but all of our gardens are unique. And so you really do need to question all information you get it from multiple sources, test it yourself, grow it yourself. And that's the best way to become a successful gardener, is exactly what Tony says. Test. I every year I'm experimenting. Every year I'm trying new things. And that's after I already know what I'm doing. I'm still trying to ensure that what I'm doing is the best way. And if I'm going to be telling people what I do and offering suggestions, I do want it to be as accurate as possible. But, another thing, we were talking about making videos that go back over the years, and I've changed the way that I do some of my gardening, and some of my earlier videos are still appropriate, but they don't necessarily match what I do now, because gardening is an evolution. It's a journey, and it should be constantly changing and improving as you try all those new things. And relying on something is important. And so, thanks, Tony. That's what great gardeners do, is they don't just rest on their laurels and say this works. It's fine. I don't get me wrong. I'm not criticizing that. There are a lot of gardeners that have been gardening for decades. They learned what works for them. They do it that way every single year. More power to them. That's wonderful. I'm just saying, for me, it may not be the best way to do it. And the only way I can determine that is to just keep trying new things and seeing if I can find a better way for me.
Yeah, really, in the long run. And we find we find that and it's just natural, I suppose. Gardening in a certain way seems like it's really got all of these facets to it. It's just this expanse of things that you need to know in order to be successful and do things. When you're first getting started, your mind's full of a lot of that stuff. And I remember myself too, as well, when I first started growing my own food and stepping outdoors to grow these plants and stuff. I was, all over, just trying to figure things out. And then ultimately, through experience, through time, through testing, through doing these things over the years, things just get a lot more easier and simplified because you're taking the time to gain those experiences, and they're fun. It's fun, in the long run, to kind of learn some of that stuff. So again, it's similar to what we were talking about with the video making or whatever. When it comes to just gardening itself, just jump in, get started, start growing some stuff, and then again, like you said, reach out to places that are localized, find groups and people and things like that, and then test and expand that knowledge through each and every season. And then after a few seasons, you'll find a lot more successes and being a lot more comfortable with your growing experience. And that's what it's all about, is just gaining some experience and having fun with it.
Absolutely.
Don't ever worry about failing or not getting something or doing something wrong, because again, too, some of my old videos, some of those sort of things, I've got the same sort of stuff. All of us gardeners go through those very similar experiences, and some of us have actually taken the time to share some of those experiences with you.
Yeah, I've got a video coming out soon, in fact, that talks specifically about that I think one of the reasons gardeners are so great and so resilient is because we recognize that the best way to learn how to be a better gardener is by making mistakes and learning from those mistakes. So failure is not a bad word when it comes to the garden. In fact, I actually look forward to some of those failures to be able to analyze and figure out what to do better next time.
Right. Exactly. All right. If you got any last minute questions, you want to jump in real quick here for Gardener Scott, we'll try to fit some in there. I know Serena did ask something here just a little back ago I wanted to jump back to. And let's see here. She was asking, I think she was saying her Sam's Club already has some sweet potatoes and regular potatoes, it looks like, for sale, but it's freezing and won't warm up until March. Is when she usually plants potatoes. And then she asks, should I go ahead and buy them? Would be now a good time to get some,
that's totally up to you.
Growing slips and stuff indoors, maybe, or to let them chit or whatever.
Possibly. Again, it gets down to the what are the conditions going to be like in a month or 2 months. And so like for sweet potatoes, for instance, I've got a video where I bought a sweet potato from the supermarket and showed how you grow the slips. And so it takes longer for sweet potatoes because you have to start them ahead of time, start those slips, then you put the slips into the ground. Well, one of the mistakes I made, talking about failures, it wasn't a failure, but it was a mistake. Because my season is so short, I didn't anticipate how long it would really take for those slips to develop. And so when I put my sweet potatoes in the ground, the soil was still not quite warm enough. So great plants actually had a pretty good harvest, but they weren't the big sweet potatoes because they were stunted a little bit because I had to put them in the ground too early. And so for many of us right now, would be too soon to start sweet potato slips because they're going to need to go in the ground in 6 weeks. And for most of us, the ground isn't going to be warm enough in 6 weeks. The same with potatoes. You can put potatoes in when it's still a little bit cool. You can actually start your potatoes in the ground, your seed potatoes, before your last frost date. But that's because the typical growth of a potato means that it's going to be emerging from the soil after the last frost date. And so when's your last frost date? And are you going to have enough time to put everything in the ground? Costco, Sam's Club, all those places will save you money, but is it really worth the couple dollars you save to now be starting too early and now everything dies? Or now you have to figure out how to store them for 2 months or more until you can actually get them planted and growing. And so I can only answer for myself. I would not be buying seed potatoes of either sweet potato type or a regular potato type now, because for me, it's just too early. But for you, Serena, I don't know if your conditions are going to be warming up enough in the next month, then it might be suitable to consider.
Yeah, yeah. I think she was mentioning the date of March 17th there, I think. Yeah. So that would still be, we're looking at a couple of months. So you're looking at 8-10 weeks out still. You might wait a few weeks.
Yeah, I would wait a few weeks. And if it's a variety that you just have to grow, and if it's a cost that you just can't pass up, you can store them. You can put them in a nice, cool, dark, dry location for another month. The seed potatoes that are in the stores right now were harvested months ago and then stored in those cool, dry conditions. So it's, you got to put all those factors together and decide if it's really suitable to meet all your needs. The thing about potatoes at this time of year, garlic in the fall, is if there's a specific variety that you're looking for, if you don't act quickly enough, it might not be available at the time that you want to put it in the ground. So for instance, I bought some new music bulbs a year or two ago, and I bought those music garlic bulbs almost 3 months before I planted the cloves, because I knew that I wanted those and I wanted to make sure I had them in hand when it came time to plant.
Yeah.
And then I just put them into cool storage waiting for the right time. So that's one of those factors that if it's a limited offer, one-time deal, then yeah, you might want to do it. And then just put them into storage. But it's in January for planting in March. It's close.
Yeah. And, again, I see Wendy asked to, is it time to plant radishes? And again, we're thinking about soil temperature, that sort of stuff. Radishes can handle, but they can handle
cool temperatures. Yeah, like Mark was showing, the key about any plant is the germination temperature that plant requires.
Right. Yeah.
And so, for instance, lettuce can germinate at 34 degrees, just above freezing. But it takes like 60 days for a spinach seed to germinate at 34 degrees. If you wait until the temperature rises to 50 degrees, spinach will germinate in like 4 days. And so that's the thing about radish seeds. And again, it gets back to wherever you live and whatever your soil temperature is. You can put radish seeds in the ground. And, like I'm saying, and like Mark said in the earlier video, you just have to expect that the germination is going to take longer in cooler temperatures. And so I've learned over the years that you can either put a seed in and wait 3 weeks for it to germinate, or wait 3 weeks and then put the seed in the ground, and you have very similar results.
Excellent. Yeah. Right on. So again, too, really great to have you here today. Before you get going, though, you've just did your last live stream. You were talking a little bit about cost saving and all of that too. So what's coming up for your next live stream? I know that you do. Are you back? You're going to be back tomorrow morning, right?
So I'll be back tomorrow for the live stream, 8 a.m. Pacific time for you and those others that are on the West Coast. And I'll be talking about seeds again. And actually, the primary focus will be on what seeds need to be able to germinate. So
perfect.
I'll be talking about, lights and water and fertilizer or not. And basically all those things that are helpful to know about getting seeds started. Especially a lot of new gardeners that I've talked to are a little intimidated by seed starting because they think there's a lot to it. And as you know, there isn't. Once you start growing seeds, you realize how easy it is when you identify the basics. So tomorrow's going to be about the basics of seed starting.
Oh, well, that's perfect. As we're all getting started with getting a lot of the seeds and everything too. Again, we were asking earlier about favorite seed catalogs, and I'm sure people have been getting those and ordering seeds and all of that too. And learning how to grow and garden with seeds, like you said, makes things really ultimately even comes back to what I was talking about. When we get started, we think, things are a little more complicated than what they really actually are as we learn through experience and all of that. And having fun with growing seeds and learning to do that is so beneficial to our gardening experience, and ultimately too for our pocketbook, because growing from seeds can make things a lot less expensive.
Yep. Even when you kill a lot of plants. I've got another
Yeah.
video coming out in a couple of weeks. I'll have a video talking about all the plants I've killed. And
Yeah.
I have killed so many seedlings because of the growth of my learning curve. And even when you take into account all of those plants that have died while I learned how to grow from seed, I've still saved money over the years compared to if I had grown my garden each year with plants that I bought from the
Yeah.
nursery or the box store. So even when it doesn't work, you can still save a lot of money with starting from seeds.
Yeah. So definitely you won't want to miss Gardner Scott back again right early in the morning tomorrow for his talk about seed starting. Again, it's a perfect time of year to get some of that information. I'm going to be starting my pepper seeds, as I mentioned earlier, too, this week to get everything going. And then again, too, kind of on the theme of what we've kind of been talking about a little bit, as I move forward with growing things, a lot of part of the planning that I'm doing is taken into consideration, my first frost or my last frost date, and kind of, how long it's going to take for certain things to be ready to go outside. And then we also kind of started off the conversation a little bit about, thinking about hardening off. And that's something we'll get to down the road a bit. But then, that's something we will also want to consider in our planning as well, too, the hardening off process, and then getting them out into our outdoors when it's appropriate. Exactly. But yeah, lots of fun, lots of things to be thinking about as 2025 is just kicking in right now. We're just getting started, and I know we're all excited out there, and we're all excited to be able to have you here joining in with us here on the Let's Get Growing show to experience that. And as well, like I said, to go over to Gardner Scott's channel and go check out what he's got going. Always new videos, always something new to learn. I love everything that you do and everything that you put out. Go down to the description below. There's a link to his channel down there if you haven't been there yet already. And I'll be surprised if you haven't, because if you we gotta all follow what Gardner Scott's doing. Thanks again for spending your day with us here too on Sundays. And again, so much more to look forward to as we get growing here.
Always nice to be here, Enoch, and good to see you. We'll see you again next month. And thanks to everybody who's here.
Excellent. Right on. Okay. We'll see you in February. Let's Get Growing is sponsored by IV Organic.
Hi, my name is Charles Malky, biologist and plant expert with IV Organics, where we grow cool plants and author Saving the World with the Home Garden. IV Organic 3-in-1 Plant Guard has 7 natural oils that protect your plants, not just from the summer heat as well as winter cold, but also protects your plants from damaging insects and rodents. The oils in the product include castor, cinnamon, clove, garlic, peppermint, rosemary, and spearmint. These oils are natural insect and rodent repellent oils, which are encapsulated by the base powder, offering your plants months of protection at a time. 1 application per year will suffice for protection against damaging summer sunburn and winter sun scald, but if the target is pests, application as much as 2 to 3 times a year may be necessary.
All right. Excellent. What another great show here today. for our Sunday edition of the Let's Get Growing show. Thanks again so much to Gardner Scott for hanging out with us and having such a great gardening conversation. I have like a list of different things I want to talk about with him each time I get him on here, just to kind of fill in with a lot of the questions and everything. We had a lot of great questions today, everybody. I really appreciate that. So I didn't even get to a lot of the other things I wanted to talk about with him and stuff, because again, we just end up having such a great conversation and discussion about all of these just really great things to know about in our garden, especially this time of year, or maybe even understanding some things a little bit better, like touching on the hardiness zones and what we should be thinking about when it comes to getting other plants started, soil temperatures and those sort of things that we can think about in our garden planning and all of that. Because again, that's what a lot of us are doing. We touched a little bit on that too as well. For some of us in the more northern regions, we're all some are, well, not me, but some are under snow and freezing temperatures like Gardner Scott. So it just means that we've got a little bit longer to wait before we can get started with our gardens, but we're still doing a bunch of planning and thinking about all of the sort of stuff that we're doing, or as I'm about to get started, as I mentioned this week, getting my peppers started. I've got them broken down to, I have a bunch of different varieties to choose from, but I have to limit myself, and that's one of the things we have to do in our planning too, is kind of limit what we're going to be planting and growing for the gardening season. So I kind of broke it down. I think I've got it down to about 15 varieties we're going to do this year. And so I'm going to get those plants all started up, because I like to get a really good head start on peppers, especially because they sometimes grow slow growers, I get them started well in advance. We keep potting them up until I've got the amount that I need for all of the space that I got growing out there, and get them growing under different lights. And I'll be showing you all that sort of stuff as we get moving forward here in the coming weeks, and moving towards spring and all of that, and getting outdoors into the garden with our garden videos. I'm going to try to stay on track with this. This is my big goal for 2025 as we get moving forward, is to share more garden videos with all of you. I touched on that also at the beginning of the show too, that I did put out a couple of new ones, just kind of a reintroduction of myself, and kind of actually too, yesterday I mentioned this to Gardner Scott, or Friday actually was January 10th, and that was the 8th anniversary of this channel, the Urban Gardener, and also it has another real significance in my life as well too. I'll just tease out the title of the video: Gardening Saved My Life, and I explain that just a little bit more in that video. You'll want to go back and check out our videos if you haven't seen them yet already, and catch up with what we've got growing on. And I'll try to keep up with making and putting out more videos in the coming weeks, especially as we get those seeds started, and I'll show you some of our light stations, and just kind of the indoor process as I get things ready to move outdoors in the spring. And then we also got some outdoor stuff as well too to start taking a look at as we move into a new gardening season. So again, thank you all so much for being here today. I see everybody in here. Wes's lawn care jumped in there as well too. Great to see you by all. We got Tony for the conversation today. Always great to see you as well too. And Chris jumping in there saying he'll see you tomorrow for Gardner Scott's live stream. As I mentioned too, Gardner Scott will be on his live stream tomorrow at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. That'll be 11 a.m. Eastern Time as well too. So if you didn't get your garden question answered or in to be considered on our chat, definitely jump in Gardner Scott's chat tomorrow on his live stream and get all of your gardening questions answered from him as well too. And again, just such a great wealth of knowledge from Gardner Scott. I love just learning more and more about gardening, and just being able to have this fun garden conversation with all of you as well too. So it's just been really fun to hang out again today here on the show. And just real quick though too, to mention, if you didn't catch yesterday's show, it was our 100th show, the 100th Let's Get Growing show. And I mentioned a little bit earlier as well too, I did do a little kind of tour. You know, in fact, maybe what I'll do is I'll kind of cut that out, maybe release it as a little video or something too, a side video, in case you guys missed it or whatever, or you don't have the time to go back to tomorrow's show. I'll put it out as a video you can catch later on. But I did a little tour of all of the plants that are in the background here. So we got out kind of up and close, and you can see like the monstera here that you only see part of, or what's growing on behind it. You can't really see too much of the pothos that's back there, but you know, or the ones that are actually right behind me, you don't really see much of. So give a nice little tour to show you all what we've got growing on back there, as well as we invited back our very first guest of the show, our good friend Wendy Fan joined with us as well yesterday too. So if you did miss that show, you want to go back and check that out. Really fun conversation. Wendy always brings such a really great enthusiasm and joy to the whole gardening experience and everything too. So really fun conversation with her. And then also again, last Sunday on the show, our first Sunday edition of 2025, we started off with a gardening roundtable with Gary Polarchik from the Rustic Garden and Callie Kim from the Callie Kim channel on YouTube. Those two do lots of collaborations over the years, so it was really kind of fun to get them together for a great gardening conversation and talking about things growing on and answering some questions and what they have happening in 2025. So again, a fun conversation with them. You'll want to go back and check that out. And then as well too, what's coming up next Saturday on the show, we're heading down under with our good friend Marty Ware from Marty's Garden. Will be joining with us next Saturday on the show. And unlike last time we had Marty on the show, we recorded something and had like a really fun kind of pre-recorded conversation with him last time we had him on the show last year, or might have even been the year before. I think it's probably been a while since Marty's been on, but it'll be great to get together with him. And he's going to get up nice and early, because it's nice and early for him. I think about 6 o'clock in the morning, actually Sunday morning, because it's Saturday for us. It'll be Sunday for him. Early morning, 6 o'clock. He's going to get up with us and hang out and have a live conversation with us as well too. So if you want to catch up with what's going on in Australia, they're in their just right in summertime. Summertime's just been kicking in for the last month there, and we'll see what's been growing on, as I'm sure Marty's Garden is in full swing. So it'll be really fun to hang out with him. And then for the Sunday edition next week as well too is our third Sunday of the month. And on the third Sunday of the month, we have our gardening book club. Everybody sees on our Sunday edition in the garden segment, Mark Boucher Colbert sharing with us today what's growing on over at the school where he teaches kids throughout all different grades how to garden and grow. He did a video showing us what he's got going on there in the garden there right now. But he'll be joining with us live next week, as next week we'll be here featuring our monthly gardening book club. In our monthly gardening book club is featuring The Botanic Gardens of the World by Deborah Trentham. This is just such a wonderful book. It's just really great. I've been really, really enjoying it. And I can't wait till next week. We'll get together live with Mark Boucher Colbert. We'll talk all about that book with Deborah Trentham live on the show. And it's just, again, really amazing book. I just can't imagine getting to visit some of these just amazing botanic gardens that are out there worldwide. some of the oldest gardens in the world that have been around for just centuries, and just some amazing structures that they've built to house some of these different types of plants, to show different regions. And they're just an amazing education center to learn more about botany and all the different types of plants that grow all over the world, and just so many amazing varieties out there that I can't even imagine, just knowing some of the types of plants and things I've got to see at my own botanical gardens. More so, I've been to the San Francisco one, up in Seattle as well too, but just to imagine some of these other ones around the world is just really great. So we'll be having a fun conversation with Deborah all about her visits to some of these just amazing botanical gardens. You won't want to miss out on that. So you'll definitely want to come and join with us for that show. And definitely here, before we get going, you want to click that like button, hit the thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so you can be notified of those upcoming shows that we've got here on the Let's Get Growing show coming up through the 2025 season, with all these amazing guests that we get here on the show, like Gardner Scott today, Wendy Fan yesterday, and all of the other guests we've got coming up in 2025. Every Saturday and Sunday here on the Urban Gardener channel at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern. And it's just been so amazing to, hang out with you guys again, too. Just really, really awesome to see all of your questions, all of your comments, all of the discussion that you guys are having during our conversation with Gardner Scott today. You guys all make this so much fun and so enjoyable. So again, I really thank you so much for being here. And but yeah, it's so great to again see all of you. Thank you all so much for all that you guys contribute, and be sure to follow all the links down below to Gardner Scott's channel. Go see him tomorrow, 8 a.m. Come back and join with us here next Saturday for our conversation with Marty Ware from Australia, and our book club next Sunday as well too. So again, thank you so much for joining with us here today, and I look forward to seeing you on our very next show next Saturday.